Okay, the stream's now live.
Okay, good morning everyone and welcome to this Cabinet meeting on the 22nd of July 2020. It's 10 o'clock, so we are going to make a start this morning. This is our second virtual Cabinet meeting, so everyone who's watching us on YouTube, welcome. Just want to go through some basic video meeting house rules, which I'm sure you'll all be very familiar with at the moment. So the first one is if you are not talking to mute, because you might not be hearing feedback at your end, but there's every chance that it's causing feedback for others on the call and those watching on YouTube live. The second thing I would like to say is at this stage, we have councillors for agenda item number 4, which is questions at Cabinet meeting. Welcome to those councillors. Once we get to that stage, an opportunity to ask supplementary questions, and we've got a list and we will go through those in the order they've been submitted. Once you have completed asking your supplementary questions, I would ask you that you leave the meeting and rejoin via YouTube. We've also got councillors Nigel Robbins and Ian Doby for agenda item number 5. But again, both members will have an opportunity to make a presentation at this Cabinet meeting, and once that item is complete, I would ask both Nigel and Ian to leave the room and to rejoin the meeting via YouTube. During the meeting for Cabinet members, if you wish to ask a question, you can use the raise hand option on the app. If that seems to be failing, please wave frantically at your screen, and I will try and keep an eye out for you to make sure that we don't miss any members who wish to speak on a particular item. But it does come to the voting on every item. I'm a bit old-fashioned, so I will be asking Cabinet members to raise their hand. Just make sure, as per normal, that I can see your hand and it's not off camera when we get to those items on the agenda. So hopefully that's all very clear. So let's get on to the agenda items before us this morning. The first is apologies for absence. Joe, can you just say who we've got as apologies for this meeting?
We have no apologies from Cabinet members. We have apologies from Peter Bungardus, Chief Executive, and Rob Ailiff, Monitoring Officer, will be representing Pete at the meeting. We also have apologies from Steve Mawson as Director of Finance, and we have Paul Blacker attending the meeting on Steve's behalf, but no Cabinet apologies. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe, for that. Moving on to agenda item number 2. Minutes of our previous meeting, the 17th of June 2020. Are Cabinet content that these are a true record? If so, please raise your hands. Yep, that looks good to me. So those are noted and agreed. Item 3 is declarations of interest. Do any Cabinet members have any interest to declare on items that are on today's agenda? No, thank you very much. We're therefore going to item number 4, which is questions at Cabinet meetings. The questions have been submitted and written answers have been provided. There are no public questions at this meeting, so we go on to members' questions, to which there are 32 in total. As again, I'll say that we have had written questions and written answers have been submitted, so we are looking for supplementaries. So I will ask members when I invite them into the call to indicate which questions they have supplementaries on, and then to ask those supplementaries. So the first block of questions, 1 to 4, are in the name of Councillor Matt Babbage. I believe Matt is on the call. I have seen him pop in. So Matt, welcome. Please could you indicate which questions you have a supplementary to? Matt.
Thank you, Chair. Just one supplementary from me. It's on question 3. It's really just a clarification. It talks about a 6-month consultation period. I just wanted to clarify that that's that would be running in parallel with any sort of trial period, any trial scheme, rather than having to be in advance or anything like that. So just a clarification on that one, please.
Thanks, Matt. Nigel.
Yes, Matt, thank you very much for your supplementary question. I can confirm that that consultation period would be in tandem, run in tandem with the trial. So essentially the trial would include the consultation period.
Thank you.
You're on mute, Mark.
Apologies, my button's broken. If there's no more questions from Matt, I'm going to go to the block in the name of Rachel Smith. There are 14 of those entitled. Good morning, Rachel, and please could you indicate which questions you have supplementaries to?
Yeah, thank you. I have supplementaries to question 10, 16 and 18, and I was disappointed that the written answers didn't address all of my questions, even though I made them fairly, pretty clear and in detail in that way. So supplementary to question 10, it's really shocking to see that areas like this have made their way this far into the report. It does leave me quite concerned that there may be others. So my question is the Cabinet member satisfied that the report the public have seen is otherwise accurate and that these errors do not affect the recommendations?
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Yes, I took trouble to look at this myself, looked at the tables in question, and I'm satisfied with the revisions that have been made.
Thank you for that. Supplementary to question 16.
So, thank you. So we have a commitment to reduce carbon across the whole county, and the assessments in the report should indicate policy impacts on that and not just the council's own estate. So I asked about the net reductions in my question, but the answer talks about offset. So in reality, even though an accounting trick has been used to claim reductions in CO2 for our estate, Javelin Park still puts out the same CO2 emissions after this decision. So will the Cabinet member therefore accept it as minuted that the climate impact of this decision is at best neutral?
No, I don't.
That's a fairly straightforward answer. Question 18.
So, yeah, I was surprised at this because one of the things I've noted in engaging with the Conservative-led administration is that Gloucestershire County Council is not fond of being the first to do anything, and it often seeks comparators from its peers. So why has no advice from peers being sought in this case on this contract extension?
Thank you. I've got some further information actually on this, Councillor Smith. There are existing energy from waste plants in Cornwall, Teesside, Coventry and Peterborough, who are all basically adopting the approach to energy consumption and energy purchase that we have. And also, interestingly enough, 3 other councils, South Somerset, Ashford Borough Council and Warrington Borough Council, are embarking on energy schemes themselves in terms of energy production. So I think in terms of our peers, we're very much in accord with other councils that have embarked on energy from waste plants.
Thank you, Nigel. Thank you, Rachel, for that. Do you have any further supplementaries? No?
Yeah, done. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm moving on to the next block, which is in the name of Jeremy Hilton. I can't actually see Jeremy on the list of participants. So, Jeremy, are you there? I think the short answer to that is no. So I'm going to move on to the next block of questions, which are in the name of Colin Hay. Colin, I saw that you are on screen. So, Colin, would you like to ask supplementaries? Colin? Okay, Colin, there you go. You come off mute.
Sorry. Yeah. I'm hopefully there. Yeah, thank you for the answers. And I think, to me, both answers highlight one of the issues there is simply in contracting, because it means that the council is too slow to be able to change direction. And I think that's really disappointing. I understand the bit about COVID and it pushing it forward, but I think those that were on the working party would really have liked to have seen change more quickly. And it's our incapability of doing that because of the contracts that we're in. So it's more of a statement rather than supplementary. But anyway, thank you.
So, Colin, I'm guessing, because you didn't indicate which two questions you were talking about, that they are the ones to Richard Boyles.
Indeed.
So, Richard, I don't know whether you want to respond to that.
Yeah, Colin, thanks very much for your questions. With regard to the agility of the council and recontracting, we were in a good position to go forward with recontracting until we faced the current pandemic. And so what we wanted to do was stabilise children's services, as you've already accepted in the answer that was provided, making sure that we can continue to provide the support that's necessary for the young people across the county during what is an extended period of an emergency for this county that we still are in the middle of and will progress into next year, was really important, not just for me, but for the officers themselves. And just touching on the second question, number 26, we work very closely with children who aren't in crisis, and we've linked that into the work that we do within this contract through the Prospects group, and providing advice to young people, youth workers in the community, youth support and training to other organisations and youth groups from our providers of youth services and youth workers. We work with LGBTQ groups and other groups to make sure that we're in contact with all aspects of young people. And we continue to support members of the National Youth Parliament and also work on the Duke of Edinburgh Award, of which we're one of the top performers in the country for that, not only for children who aren't in crisis, but children that we work with much more closely. So I do understand what you're saying, but there is a lot of background work that goes on to support all sorts of young people across the whole of the county, and we needed to make sure that that work was continued throughout this period of emergency. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, and thank you, Colin, for your supplementary question. If there are no more supplementary...
Yes, there are. I just thought I didn't look at the sheet, and there was a question to Nigel on 24, but I thought I'd take the ones from Richard first. So can I take 24? And
you can.
Can you please provide the figures for when garden waste is removed from the calculations? That was to Nigel.
Well, obviously, I can let you have those, but I can't let you have them immediately.
I understand.
Okay.
And then on question 27, understandably, the cabinet members confused the question with those of Councillor Smith. I didn't ask about Javelin Park. I was referring to the council's claims to buy 100% renewables. Can you confirm you understand the difference between purchasing REGO certificates and purchasing truly renewable electricity?
Yes, I do. And you might be interested to know that your own council, Cheltenham Borough Council, are also on the WME's pure green electricity tariff. So we're in. I'm sure you would agree. We're in good company in terms of purchasing green energy.
Indeed, but do you understand why some campaigns...
Colin, he answered the question. He answered the question. You need to ask your supplementary question and say which question you're asking us. So come on, you've been on this council long enough. You know the score.
The only problem is it's difficult with the bits of paper, and so just 1 second and I'll give you the number of the question. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you.
hang on, just 1 second. So it's question 27, I think. Sorry, it is. I'm struggling a bit. Do you understand why some campaigners and some consumer protection brands, such as Which, believe that REGO certificates are just greenwash?
Colin, I'm aware of these concerns, and of course, what I'm asking Cabinet to do today is agree a principle. Whether or not we decide to use those REGOs is another matter. So clearly, we are aware, and I've discussed this with officers. We are aware of the concerns, and we are in discussion with our providers with those concerns in mind.
Okay, one last question. I think it's 28. Is, do you accept the logical conclusion that not knowing where WME buy its fuel mix from, along with the controversial use of REGO certificates for just £8,000 a year, means GCC is not absolutely supporting renewable energy generation, but simply greenwashing? And does it show that actually, so long as it looks okay, actual change is less important? And just finally, I do understand that actually at this moment in time, buying completely green generated electricity is difficult for large consumers, but we really ought to be pushing for more generation, more truly green generation to be created.
Colin, that is exactly our position, and like Cheltenham, we are in discussion with our providers, and we will continue to have those discussions in terms of getting the best possible information.
Okay, thank you, Mark. That's it.
Brilliant. Thanks, Colin, for that. And I do appreciate that for some members it is quite difficult to toggle between electronic copies and being online. So I do appreciate the problem. Okay, I think that's all the questions that we have for this morning. So thank you all of the members who asked questions. As I said at the beginning, can I ask members who are asking questions only if they could now leave the meeting and rejoin via YouTube Live. So I'll just give people a second to do that. I think that's all done. Thank you all very much for that. I'm going to move on to agenda item number 5, which is motion from full council. There's a report that has been circulated on this subsequent to the issuing of cabinet papers. As such, I'm going to invite Councillor Doby to address cabinet, followed by Councillor Robbins, and then give Nigel Moore an opportunity to respond to the meeting this morning. So, Councillor Doby, I'm not timing you, but my generosity runs out after 4 or 5 minutes. So, I'm sure you know that.
I understood, Chairman. Thank you. Cabinet members, this morning I want to make things simple for you. I want to make it easy for you to say yes, go ahead, we back you, officers, just do it. Essentially, in line with this motion today, I'm primarily calling for school streets to be looked into seriously in Gloucestershire, starting with establishing our county's first pilot official school street in Warden Hill, which I represent as county and borough councillor and as a school governor. And I am pleased to note that within the last few days, a paper to Cabinet by senior GCC officer Philip Williams supports what I'm urging this morning. I'm making it easy for you to agree since, firstly, along with Warden Hill primary staff and others, in recent weeks I've been out there at the end of the street persuading parents from driving up the unofficial school street during the COVID-19 crisis in order to enable children to walk and cycle to school safely. So from direct first-hand experience, I can assure you that parents do get it. They first see the new unofficial, no dropping off or picking up signs, and they park elsewhere. I can tell you again that there is extensive parking just a few meters away. The moral pressure from other parents and pupils usefully adds to beneficial behaviour change. Parents don't drive up Durham Close. They walk and cycle with their children. There's no need for heavy-handed policing, but we do need to make it legal. We just need to make this into an official pilot school street, maybe one of 3 across Gloucestershire. The government has, secondly, the government has explicitly encouraged local authorities to establish school streets across the country to encourage walking and cycling. The Secretary of State for Transport, Grant Shapps, is on record calling on councils such as ours to close streets for this purpose, and he has made substantial government funding available to us to do so. He has introduced powers for local authorities to crack on quickly, and he has made clear that unless we are bold in the measures we take to respond to his offer, notably by closing roads, we can expect less government funding to encourage cycling and walking in future. Many other counties, including, for example, neighbouring South Gloucestershire, have recently seized this opportunity to use new emergency powers to establish school streets at short notice during the current crisis. Last week, Conservative-controlled Shropshire passed a school streets motion very similar to the one before you today. In fact, it was modelled on ours. Given the will, which this cabinet can state right now, our county too can move fast. Ideally, to get at least pilot school streets in place before the start of the autumn term in September. Thirdly, you've already said that you are sympathetic to and supportive of the School Streets Initiative. Cabinet member Nigel Moore recently visited Wardenhill to see how its unofficial school street is working. Incidentally, he visited on a day when I was not at the end of Durham Close, physically persuading parents away from driving up to the school gates, but rather when Emma Nelson was doing so. Now, Emma is a fellow parish councillor. She stood against me as the Conservative candidate at the last borough council election, and her husband, Chris Nelson, is both the chairman of Cheltenham's Conservative Party and also the Conservative candidate for the Gloucestershire Police and Crime Commissioner. So on the ground, then there is evidently cross-party support for school streets in Gloucestershire, and you've heard from Matt this morning as well. He's on side too. Additionally, please note I have visited the current Gloucestershire Police and Crime Commissioner, Martin Searle, to get his support. The motion urged GCC to do more than promote school streets. It also recommended no idling zones and air pollution monitoring outside our county schools. I would encourage you to consider and back these associated proposals in due course. But today, right now, I would like you to listen to what is being said to you by schools, by parents, by residents. I have polled them, by your own party leadership and its members, and by me, and formally back the introduction of school streets in Gloucestershire, starting with backing my pilot scheme and maybe the others listed by Philip Williams, to show how this initiative to encourage walking and cycling can, in practice, be quickly rolled out for suitable streets and schools across our county. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ian. I'm going to invite Nigel Robbins.
Thank you, Mark.
There you are.
Yes, yes.
I've got you all on my screen. I couldn't see you.
Very glad we're live. Thank you, Mark, for the opportunity. I'd like to pick up 1 or 2 points that Nigel Moore made in response to questions by Matt Babbage. One of the points was that the county has been working very closely with schools to develop school travel plans. That's perfectly true. Unfortunately, I don't think these are monitored. In other words, what's the follow-up? I don't hear of any school having its license to practice withdrawn because it hasn't achieved the aspirations, which is what they are in school travel plans. So some schools have cycle racks, which they committed because of their aspirations, which remain empty. Now, the reason for that is not their unwillingness to encourage young people to cycle to school. It is simply that the infrastructure, safe cycling routes, controlled crossing points over main roads, as well as the elimination of conflict with cars at the school entrance, those things have not been achieved. And in fact, that's confirmed really by the draft highways transport plan, which I looked at very closely. And it was quite clear from that the percentage of young people, as far as we can judge, who cycle to school has really not moved at all in the last 5 or 6 years. I don't know whether there are any up-to-date statistics on that, but The whole COVID-19 experience, of course, is a distortion because not many people have been going to school, and most of the increase in cycling is recreational or adults trying it out, going to work. People have also, and I think this was raised too in some of the questions to Nigel, that congestion might occur elsewhere if drivers are shunted away from school entrances. Well, a number of schools, for very good reasons, where they can afford it, have set up walking bus routes. That's to say, a teacher or a teacher's assistant, doesn't have to be a teacher, frankly. I think there are plenty of volunteers who could do this if they're properly trained, escort a group of children to school along the roads, across crossings, and that prevents the congestion outside the school. Excellent idea. Now, the starting point for these walking bus routes is invariably a place where people can drop children off safely. Ian's example in Warden Hill apparently is a car park. It's the big Morrison's car park. That is not going to increase congestion. It will probably alleviate congestion, not just around the school, but in the neighbourhood. So there are solutions to these things. It is perfectly true, as I think Nigel Moore said, that safer streets, school streets, will not of themselves facilitate, well, they will not bring about a modal shift, but they can start the move towards a modal shift. But we do need some of the other implementations that I've suggested in terms of better cycling routes. Together, they can start the really important move towards getting young people to walk and to cycle to school, thus improving their health. So that's really all I have to say. I support Ian completely. I think he's got a real mastery of the subject, and he's shown the initiative which we would like to see across the county. So thank you very much for that. I hope you can consider it sympathetically.
Thank you, Nigel, for that. Sorry, I was having some problems coming off mute. I'm going to invite Nigel Moore to respond.
Thank you very much, Leader. And can I thank Councillor Dobie and Councillor Robbins for their advocacy and their contribution. I would also like to thank officers for the very useful paper on school streets that we've circulated. From that paper, you will see that officers in the Think Travel team have identified schools which are currently working or have recently worked with them to implement a travel plan. And based on the information, I have decided that we will trial school streets at these three schools: Gloucester Kingsholm Primary, Cheltenham Warden Hill, Tewkesbury Primary. I've agreed a budget of 100,000 for the trial, and I and the team are aiming to have the trials in place during September. So, Councillor Dobie, I did, as you know, visit Warden Hill on 2 occasions actually, and saw at first hand the way the scheme was working out. So I hope that this reassurance today of beginning these trials is testimony to your advocacy and what we believe as an administration is a very useful way forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Nigel, for that. Does any other Cabinet members have any comments or questions they wish to ask? Tim Harman.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I'm very happy to support this. Obviously, I represent the adjoining division to Councillor Dobie. I know the area well. I don't know this particular school at Warden Hill that well, but I was a governor of another school for 10 years, not very far away. I just would pass a comment that we did develop a very effective school travel plan there in consultation with the County Council, which included the walking bus, which Councillor Robbins has mentioned, and road improvements, which I think included putting speed humps in over some safety concerns. Obviously, each individual location and configuration of the school will have an impact on how it is achieved locally. And I think the three trial schemes, which Nigel Moore has mentioned, will give us, I'm sure they'll all be slightly different from each other, and will give us that breadth of experience going forward. Yes, very happy to support this, and I hope we can get it in place for the return of the of students in September.
Thank you for that, Tim. Do any other Cabinet members have any questions? Vernon.
Thank you, Leader. Morning, all. Yeah, I'm very supportive of what Nigel's proposing through Cabinet this morning. I particularly just wanted to put on record my thanks also as a local member for Tewkesbury for the Tewkesbury Primary School trial, and be keen to see it in action and monitoring it closely. So very supportive, and appreciate Councillor Moore's initiative.
Thank you, Vernon, for that. Do any other Cabinet members have any contributions to that one? So can I thank Ian Doby and Nigel Robbins for coming on the call this morning. Thank Nigel for his response. I'm sure Nigel will formally write to Ian and Nigel Robbins outlining his response and the announcement he's made today, and I'm sure that will lead to more questions from Ian, but I'm sure we can agree that there is some good progress being made following the resolution to Cabinet. So there's no more Cabinet members that wish to pass comment on that one. I'm going to move on to key decisions. So
Mark,
thank you all very much.
Okay.
And if I can invite Ian and Nigel now to switch over to YouTube Live if they wish to participate in the rest of the meeting. Thank you. Excellent. Okay, right, moving on to the next item, which is the key decisions in front of us this morning, the first of which is the monitoring report 2020-2021, pages 41 to 54 in your pack, and I invite Lyndon Stowe to present that to Cabinet.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Chairman. I think the one thing I would say before presenting this is that it's important for us to realise this year that we are going to see two underspend, overspend positions. One is related to COVID expenditure, the other to what we would call business as normal. And I hesitate to use the word normal in this year. But so first of all, I'm going to refer to COVID overspend, which, as you will see within the report, the COVID position is something like £11.6 million overspend. But what I can say is that we can now update that. And you'll notice within paragraph 3 on page 42, reference to a recent government reallocation. That was a couple of weeks ago now. But last week we received the details of that. And that is that we at the County Council will get another £3.67 million. And in addition to that, something like £3 to £4 million by way of reimbursement of lost income. With regard to the calculation of that figure, that's unlikely to have any certainty until at least the end of the financial year, because we will have to demonstrate genuine lost income and possibly also the negating loss costs that might have gone against that. So I think we're in a slightly different position now than the report. We're able to say that whilst the COVID-related overspend within the projected budget at the end of the end of this financial year would be 11.6 million, that will now be down to closer to 4 million. So that's taking somewhere just over 7 million off that figure relating to the government announcement and confirmation last week. So when we then look at business as our normal business, we come to the point that we have got a significant overspend forecast in children's and families of 9.5 million. So that's the current position, and that's because of the continuing pressure on external placements and home to school transport. Now, clearly we are doing what we can, our officers do what they can to mitigate some of that cost. And I think the early indications are that we are hoping to mitigate some of that. So that relates to the 9.5 forecast overspend. Now, against that, within technical and our county-wide budgets, we are anticipating a £5 million underspend. So you will not be able to offset that on the basis that virtually all our other services are trading where we would expect them to be at this point in time. So all in all, we have at the moment, we have something like potentially an £8 million overspend. Now, you know, one would anticipate that if we would expect further funding to come in from government, if it doesn't, then we should have to cut our cloth accordingly, particularly on those COVID-related expenses which government currently is asking us to incur. So I think that is currently where we are. If we look at our capital account, the forecast year-end position is 128 million, and that's an overspend of some 6 million. However, funding is identified to cover that within today's report. So, Chairman, happy to take any questions. I know Mr. Blacker is also, I hope Mr. Blacker is also on the line. But other than that, can I please make the recommendations, 3 recommendations as detailed on page 41 of today's report? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lyndon. Does anyone have any questions for Lyndon on this one? I'm not seeing any hands up, so if you bear with me a second. As Lyndon rightly pointed out, the recommendations are set out on page 41 of the pack. There are 3 recommendations in total. I will take them on block. So all those in favour, please show. That is duly carried. Thank you for that. So I'm moving now on to agenda item number 7, which is the M5 Junction 10 Improvement Scheme commitment to use compulsory purchase powers. And I invite Nigel Moore to present that to Cabinet.
Thank you, Leader. Cabinet is aware that earlier in the year, government confirmed to Gloucestershire County Council a successful bid to the Housing Infrastructure Fund for the sum of 219.8 million for the M5 Junction 10 Improvement Scheme. That was followed shortly by the issuing of contract conditions from government for the project. And these include both standard and bespoke conditions. Once agreed, these funding conditions will give rise to the grant determination agreement between ourselves and government and enable us to begin drawing down the funding of the scheme. As the grant recipient, we're required to discharge all pre-contract conditions before we can begin that drawdown. It remains imperative to discharge these conditions as quickly as possible in order to relieve pressure on our revenue funding that's currently sustaining the project. And one of the conditions basically asks us to provide evidence of our commitment to use CPO powers, if required, to deliver the infrastructure. To satisfy this condition and to enable the progression of the GDA, a commitment by way of our Cabinet is required by the scheme funders, Homes England. So this paper today is solely requesting authorisation to approve a resolution in principle to use compulsory purchase powers, if required, through the appropriate legislation. In the event that the CPO is required in respect of the land needed to deliver the works, I will be coming back to Cabinet for further approval. So I emphasise that this is an agreement in principle. It is our common practice as a council that where any third-party land is required to deliver highway works, our clear preference is for a negotiated settlement. It is right that this route is run in parallel to any compulsory purchase route. So the purpose of this approach will be to allow the flexibility of a mutually agreed settlement package for the landowners, but with the assurance of the CPO route in the event that negotiations are not successful. So the recommendation is a single recommendation to we agree in principle to exercise our basically the council agrees in principle to exercise its compulsory purchase powers for the acquisition of land to deliver the M5 Junction 10 improvement scheme, if required, to deliver the scheme. So, Leader, that is the clear recommendation, and I hope I've given you sufficient information to get your support.
Thank you, Nigel, for that. Does anyone have any particular questions for Nigel? Pat Molyneux.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. No questions. I just wanted to say that I fully support this paper. I hope we won't need to use these powers. The negotiated outcome is far better. But this is another important step forward in delivering what this vital scheme for the future of Gloucestershire's economy. So fully support it.
Thanks, Pat. Anyone else got any questions on this one? No. Nigel, do you have anything to add?
Patrick for his support, obviously. But no, I think the recommendation is a very clear recommendation.
Excellent. Okay, in that case, the recommendation is on page 56. It's just one sentence there on page 56. I'll take that as one. All those in favour, please show. That's duly carried. Thank you very much for that. I'm moving now on to agenda item number 8, which is a replacement of GIS healthcare fleet vehicles, pages 65 to 72, and I invite Cathy Williams to present that report to Cabinet.
Thank you, Leader. I'm asking Cabinet today to seek approval to go out to tender and award a contract for the replacement of GIS Healthcare, Gloucester Industrial Services, as it's known, fleet vehicles. The contract will be for a period of 4 years. GIS Healthcare is responsible for the delivery, collection, maintenance, and minor adaptations of medical and telecare equipment to support people in their home. This service is delivered under a service level agreement for the Integrated Community Equipment Service on behalf of Gloucestershire County Council and the Gloucestershire Care Commissioning Group. The current fleet is 20 vehicles is 5 years old, and the contract extension ends at the end of this year on the 31st of December. The fleet needs to be replaced and increased to 23 vehicles in order for the service to continue to deliver the volume of equipment across the county. Gloucestershire County Council is committed to using electric or low emission vehicles wherever practicable as part of our move towards reducing carbon emissions to zero. The vehicle specification in preparation for the tender will ensure that the requirements of the operational business plan to deliver the specifications as set out in the Integrated Community Equipment Service level agreement will also reflect the requirements of the Council's climate change strategy, which is our clean fleet replacement plan. The plan is to review the fleet and profile the vehicles before proceeding to tender to ensure that we maximise any opportunity to procure a green fleet. The cost of the new fleet will be between 1.2 and 1.3 million. This will be an increase of approximately £400,000. The Integrated Community Equipment Service is a pooled budget arrangement with Gloucestershire Clinical Commissioning Group, Gloucestershire Hospitals NHS Foundation Trust, and Gloucestershire County Council. The pooled budget split is 59% from the NHS and 41% from the County Council budget, and this increase will be covered within these arrangements. The increased cost of the contract for Gloucestershire County Council will be £164,000. So what I'm asking you is that the Cabinet delegates authority to the Executive Director of Economy, Environment and Infrastructure in consultation with the Executive Director of Adult Social Care and myself, the Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care Delivery, to conduct a competitive procurement process in respect to replacement of GIS Healthcare fleet for the delivery of the Integrated Community Equipment Service, to tender this requirement under the Crown Commercial Service Framework Agreement and ensure that the replacement of fleet meets the business requirements to deliver the Integrated Community Equipment Service, and to ensure that the replacement of vehicles is economically advantageous and meets the requirements of the Council's climate change strategy, the Clean Fleet Replacement Plan. The reason for the recommendation is, as I mentioned before, to ensure that the replacement of the fleet meets the business requirements and that we can move forward with a much cleaner, hopefully, fleet. Thank you, Leader.
Brilliant. Thank you, Cathy, for that. Does anyone have any questions or comments on that one? Vernon and then Nigel.
Leader. Yeah, I'm very supportive of this. It's great to hear about a green fleet right across the county. I would just like to give information to Cabinet. We're already looking at e-vehicles and have purchased e-vehicles, green fleet vehicles in highways at the moment, particularly in our design teams, our QSs, our inspection teams. So we're already bringing in that fleet, and I'm very supportive of this. I think it's a really important issue to see a green fleet right across the county, and I fully support it. Thank you.
Thanks, Vernon. Nigel.
And can I thank Kathy? I think this is a very good example of how, using our procurement policy, we can achieve the climate change aims that we have as a council. So it's a really good start, and thank you so much, Kathy.
Any more cabinet members on that one? Kathy, do you have anything else to add before we go to the recommendations?
No, Leader, I haven't got anything else to add.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks, Kathy. So the recommendations are outlined on pages 65 and 66. There are 2 in total, so I'll take them a block. All those in favour, please show. That is duly carried. Thank you very much for that. I'm moving on to agenda item number 9, which is the future options for delivering the Household Recycling Centre HRC service, pages 73 to 88, and I invite Nigel Moore to present that to Cabinet.
Thank you, Leader. I'll give, if I may, Cabinet a bit of background on this. Just to give you, explain, the current contract for managing the HRCs commenced on the 7th of August 2016. There are 5 HRCs provided by Gloucestershire County Council for public use, and these are managed and operated under this contract by Ubico Limited, which is a local authority-owned TECL company, of which we, GCC, are a shareholder. The contract was for a term of 5 years until the 6th of August 2021. Now, by working with Ubico, GCC has benefited from a high level of control over the service, allowing us to minimise costs and respond quickly to changing circumstances and operational needs. And we'd like to thank Ubico for the way in which they have responded to the difficulties created by the COVID-19 pandemic. The nature of the arrangement also means that GCC takes ownership of income from the sale of materials, thereby offsetting a proportion of costs, and a series of separate contracts are in place for the reprocessing or disposal of these. Now, the report has considered the benefits of continuing to work with Ubico as opposed to procuring an alternative service from the private sector. And the report concludes that the TECL company service model continues to offer good value. It's therefore recommended that the Council, first recommendation is to award to Ubico Limited without further competition a contract for the provision of household recycling centre management services at all 5 County Council HRC sites in Gloucestershire. The proposed contract shall continue for an initial period of 5 years, commencing on the 7th of August 2021, and include an option to extend its term for a further period of not more than 2 years. Secondly, to exercise a 1-year extension option to expire on the 31st of March 2022 under each of the current materials reprocessing contracts awarded under the dynamic procurement system described therein, the DPS materials contracts. So really we're taking this opportunity well in advance of the renewal of the contract to get into place this extension to the contract. I would say, you remember the question we had about recycling rates at the HRCs, and part of the contract will be to incentivise Ubico so that we can improve on the recycling rates that we experience at the moment. So, Leader, I think I've given sufficient information, but obviously very happy to take any questions from members of Cabinet.
Excellent. Thank you, Nigel, for that. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Nigel on this report? No. In that case, the recommendations are set out on pages 73 and 74, 2 in total. I'll take them on block. All those in favour, please show. That's duly carried. I'm moving now on to agenda item number 10, which is the mental health accommodation-based support. Now, there is a slight error in the paper as presented with regards to the recommendation. It says in one, I think 3 lines down, it says that the council delegates authority to the executive director, and it should say that the cabinet delegates authority to the executive director. So if that can be duly noted in the papers, I will invite Carol to present.
Thank you, Leader. This is a mental health accommodation-based support report, agenda item 10. The group of officers that have been working on this report have been working diligently to actually look at how we can improve the provision of service for people with severe and enduring mental illness. So in essence, the purpose of the report is to seek Cabinet approval for the new commissioning strategy for individuals requiring mental health supported accommodation. The contracts end on the 30th of September 2020. The new commissioning programme will directly contract existing providers, while the service recommissioning team is separated out via the Section 75 arrangements between Gloucester County Council and the Gloucestershire Clinical Commissioning Group, alongside other elements of the mental health social work. This for the delivery of integrated health and social care services for adults with serious mental illness. The final stage will be the recommissioning of these programmes, placements, through the existing Gloucester County Council framework within social care and supporting people. The recommendation set out on page 90 of the pack will allow the much needed recommissioning of this service to be undertaken in a timely and safe way. The recommendations will also allow for each person currently placed within the service to take an active part in the process. The ultimate aim of this work being to improve the quality of the lives of people that receive this service. I draw your Cabinet members' attention to page 90 with the recommendations, and the Leader has already identified an issue with a word change in recommendation 1. So recommendation 1 now reads that the Cabinet delegates authority rather than the Council. Recommendations 2 stands as on the paper, as does recommendation 3. So I commend the report for Cabinet and ask for their support. Thank you, Leader.
Brilliant. Thank you, Carol, for that. Does anyone have any comments or questions on this paper before us this morning? No. In that case, I'm going to go to the recommendations as amended on page 93 in total. All those in favour, please show. That is duly carried. Moving on to agenda item number 11, which is the commissioning youth support services, which is pages 103 to 116. And I invite Richard Bawes to present that to Cabinet.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Leader. The overriding purpose of this paper is to see us through the disruption and immediate effects of the COVID pandemic, acknowledging the wide-ranging impact of the coronavirus pandemic, and I apologise for that, acknowledging the wide-ranging impact of the coronavirus pandemic and economic downturn. Cabinet need to agree a way forward for the youth. I will just unplug it. Yeah, I've got two phones. I didn't realise that one wasn't unplugged. Cabinet need to agree a way forward for the youth support services to continue to discharge the Council's strategy and partnership responsibilities towards young people aged 10 to 24 years, following the end of the current youth support contract in March 2021. Young people are facing many challenges as a result of the coronavirus pandemic and economic downturn. The youth support services are working hard to support them in areas such as youth justice, youth work, health and mental health, homelessness, education training and employment. The services, which are provided by Prospects, were due to be recommissioned in April 2021. Extending the existing arrangements by 1 year will mean that youth support is not disrupted, providing much needed stability for young people during this uncertain time. Prospect Services management of youth support has helped Gloucestershire to reduce the number of 16 to 18-year-olds not in education, training or employment, and Gloucestershire has the best performance in the southwest. It's reduced the number of young people aged 10 to 17 entering the youth justice system, so that Gloucestershire's rate is the second best in England. We've won a national award in 2019 from the Howard League for the Children First project that keeps young people out of the criminal justice system. We've reduced teenage pregnancy to a historic low in the county, delivered wraparound services for care leavers on education, training and employment, housing and preparation for independence. We've made this county one of the most successful Duke of Edinburgh Award operators in England, and this has enabled us to support all children with disabilities or otherwise to participate and achieve this award. I recommend the proposals in option 1 to extend the contract through to March 2022.
Brilliant, thank you for that, Richard. Just a reminder, if you're not speaking, if you could put yourself on mute. So there is 1 or 2 of you who aren't in that mode at the moment, so just check. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Richard? Carol, who's just put herself back on mute, so Carol, that's all right.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to make a comment, really, that one of the crucial issues for vulnerable people within our community at the moment is for one of consistency of approach. And I fully support the extension of this the prospects services for 1 more year to allow some notion of normality to exist for individuals and for us to move forward with an even improved strategy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carol, for that. Anyone else got any questions or comments? Richard, do you have anything else to add?
No, Leader.
No, thank you. Okay, in that case, the recommendations are set out on pages 104. Just the one recommendation. All those in favour, please show. That's duly carried. The next item on the agenda is item 12, new digital and ICT services, which I'm going to ask Lyndon to report. And I will ask Rich Boyles to temporarily take over chairing the meeting for a moment. But if Lyndon, if you could start to present the report, that'd be fantastic.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Leader. This is a council which on a daily basis delivers services, key services, literally to hundreds of thousands of people. It's also a council which recognises its key role in delivering to the most vulnerable members of our communities and societies. It's also a council with ambition, aspiration and vision. Now, in order to deliver on that agenda, and in particular to deliver efficiently to our clients, to our customers and stakeholders, it is an imperative that we continually invest in ICT and computer systems. Now, the report today highlights the fact that Sopra Stereo contract comes to an end in March next year. The paper details the recommendations on what our approach should be after that. And also the fact that there is extensive requirement to invest not only in the ICT network and support, but in the emerging digital world of providing digital services. Absolutely key. The report also touches on the fact that there is potential joint working with the City Council and also with our fire and rescue service. Now, the proposal essentially proposes a framework of both internally provision, so in-house services, but also external outsourcing from a range of providers, leading edge suppliers. And that's a fundamental shift. No one contract anymore, a mix of in-house and outsourced providers to give us the best service on each of the different facets of the ICT service. And there are lots of them. They impact differently and widely across the organisation. So the report details that. The recommendation is on page 118, continuing on to 119, which I am happy to propose. But I would just give some comfort to colleagues that all the money talked about here, all the funding, whether that's the revenue funding is allowed for in our budget, whether it's capital funding, again, that is already allowed for within our capital programme. So this doesn't constitute a bid for any new money. It is all covered within our existing budget plan. I'm happy to make that recommendation then on those 2 pages, 117, 118, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Does anyone have any comments or questions? No, in that case, the recommendations are quite lengthy. They're on pages 118 and 119. There are 5 in total, which I will take on block. All those in favour, please show. That is carried. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 13, contracts relating to the sale and purchase of electricity and gas, pages 135 to 160, and I invite Nigel to present that to Cabinet.
Just to draw Cabinet's attention to the 2 appendices attached to this report. The first of all is the terms of reference for the electricity project group, and the second is a summary of the electricity trading strategy. Now, there are 5 recommendations for Cabinet, and I will go through each of these to give you some background. But the key points I want to draw first attention to is that we purchase electricity and gas to power our estate. That, of course, includes our offices and our schools. And with the Gloucestershire Energy from Waste facility operational, the council now is also a generator of electricity. And you'll be interested to know that that facility produces almost 4 times more electricity than the council and our schools use annually. Now, the first 3 recommendations, which relate to the contract extensions. And the main point of the recommendation is to align the electricity buying and selling contracts to allow the council to manage the financial risk between them in the long term. We have 2 energy purchasing contracts for electricity and for gas, and both are with West Mercia Energy. The council also has an electricity selling contract with EDF Energy. Now, these contracts currently do not have aligned expiry dates. And for us to manage the financial risk of both buying and selling electricity, the contracts need to be aligned. The existing and in aligning the contracts means that for future procurements, both contracts could be let simultaneously, allowing the council to manage the long-term buying and selling of electricity together. Now, the 4th recommendation relates to the electricity trading protocol. And the main point of the recommendation is to gain approval for the electricity trading protocol that sets the principles and procedures for buying and selling electricity. We have set up an electricity project group to manage the financial risk of buying and selling electricity. And the group developed the protocol to minimize this risk. Using the protocol, the council will coordinate electricity trading decisions, meaning that volumes of electricity produced and consumed will either be left floating, i.e. not fixed, or both be fixed at the same time. So that gives the electricity project group with the protocol the confidence of the council in operating in that way. Now, the final recommendation relates to the renewable energy guarantees of origin certificate, REGOs, that we heard about this morning in the questions to me. And I think it might be just helpful if I just set out a few points of principle in regard to REGOs, given the questioning that we had this morning. The main point of the recommendation is to gain approval to make REGOs available to this council at market rate and sell any surplus REGOs certificates to external companies. Now, REGOs are issued by Ofgem to renewable energy generators to confirm the renewable status of electricity to consumers. Ofgem issues 1 REGO per 1 megawatt hour of 100% renewable electricity generated. Now, approximately 50% of each tonne of residual waste is currently classified as renewable. Therefore, to be issued with 1 REGO certificate by Ofgem, the facility needs to produce 2 megawatt hours of electricity. Now, we as a council can assign these REGOs to match our own electricity consumption instead of paying a premium to buy green electricity using a supplier's REGO. And for your information, the current green electricity contract premium is some 25p per megawatt hour. Any remaining surplus REGOs can be sold at the prevailing market rate. So essentially what I'm asking you to approve in order to meet our climate change target to buy 100% renewable energy without paying a premium and continue to report zero CO2 emissions for our electricity use. So this is really, from our point of view, a fallback position. It gives us that additional flexibility, either to buy green energy as we do at the moment from a provider, or to offset that premium cost by using our REGOs. I'm happy to take any questions, Leader, but I hope I've given you some background on the 5 recommendations.
Thank you for that, Nigel. Does anyone have any questions or comments to Nigel on the report that he has given this morning? I'm not sure. Dave, is that a hand you put up, or is that a hand from a previous? Okay, you have your hand up on the system at the moment. Lyndon, you can definitely have a hand up. So Lyndon, I'll invite you in.
No, this is a very complex area. I congratulate officers and the Cabinet member for taking the time to go through it. And I just wanted to say from the finance portfolio, we endorse the recommendation. Thank you.
Thanks, Lyndon, for that. Anyone else got any questions or comments on this at all? No, in that case, unless Nigel, you've got anything to add, I'll go to the recommendations as outlined on pages 136 and 137.
Well, really, thank you very much, Linda, for your support. That is much appreciated. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, the recommendations are in 5 parts. I'll take them all at once. All those in favour, please show. That is duly carried. Thank you. I'm now moving on to agenda item number 14, the procurement of food waste treatment services, pages 161 to 170. I would draw Cabinet's attention to the fact that parts of this report are exempt. I would ask Cabinet members to indicate if they wish to discuss any parts of the exempt report, because that will require us to switch off our YouTube live broadcasting, and I don't particularly want to go there. So if Cabinet members do want to talk about any of the exempt items in Annex 1 of the report, please do indicate beforehand and we will make appropriate arrangements. Otherwise, I'm going to invite Nigel Moore to present to Cabinet.
Thank you, Mark. Well, members of Cabinet, this paper deals with the procurement of food waste treatment services. What I hope we've demonstrated today in the number of reports we've brought to you for your consideration is what I hope is you see as an overarching strategy on the part of this council in terms of its procurement, in terms of us meeting the climate change challenge, and that in all that we do now in terms of our procurement, we are looking at the best ways of minimizing waste, of generating energy from that waste. And this is a further extension of that overarching strategy, which is the treatment of food waste. The separate collection of food waste from households across Gloucestershire is undertaken now by all 6 district councils in their role as waste collection authorities. In all cases, this is a weekly curbside collection service. As the Waste Disposal Authority, we have a statutory duty to provide the treatment facility for this. In 2014, we entered into a 5-year contract for the provision of food waste processing via anaerobic digestion. The contract included an option to extend its term for a further 2-year period. This extension has been exercised, and the contract will therefore expire September next year. Now, new contract arrangements for the supply of food waste treatment services are required to be in place and operational by the 1st of October 2021 in order to ensure the continued provision of this service. The contract will be required to treat a minimum of 23,000 tonnes of food waste per year and provide sufficient capacity to allow for further growth in this tonnage as the population of the county increases. Separate collection and recycling of food waste remains a key part of the national resources and waste strategy, and it's very good that this throughout Gloucestershire we have this weekly service across all 6 districts. There are many environmental and cost benefits to maintaining the separate treatment of food waste, and it's therefore recommended that members agree to the 2 recommendations, which are conduct a competitive procurement process in respect of a contract for the supply of food waste treatment services. Such services shall have as their purpose the treatment of Gloucestershire's food waste that has been collected separately from residual waste. The proposed contract shall, subject to the outcome of further pre-market engagement, continue for an initial period of 8 years and include an option to extend the term for a further period of not more than 2 years. And the second recommendation is to award such contract to the preferred tenderer. So, Mark, I've given that background. The recommendations are twofold: to conduct the competitive procurement process, and then in the light of that process, award such contract to the preferred tenderer. Happy to take any questions, but I hope I've given members sufficient background that they understand the basis for this new procurement.
Thank you, Nigel, for that. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Nigel? No, I'm not seeing any hands go up. In that case, the recommendations the recommendations are on page 161. There are 2 recommendations in total. I will take them on block. All those in favour, please show. That is duly carried. Thank you very much for that. We now go on to other items before Cabinet this morning. You will see that there is one item on the agenda, which is from me regarding changes to the Constitution made by the monitoring officer. And the recommendation is to ratify changes to the Council's Constitution made by the monitoring officer on the 13th of July 2020 is required under Article 15.02 of the Council's Constitution. And if you go to pages 173, you will see the changes that have been duly made. Does anyone have any questions on that? No, in that case, as I said, the recommendation is on page 171. All those in favour, please show. That is duly carried. That is the last item on our agenda this morning. The date of our next Cabinet meeting is the 14th of October 2020. That is a change from the 7th of October 2020 meeting. Whether or not we will be meeting in public, in person, or still remotely remains to be seen. But thank you all very much for today. And can I just put on record my thanks to everyone in Democratic Services for making this run so smoothly. But thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Mark.
Nigel, have you stopped YouTube?